Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much to the panel. First of all, I'd like you to introduce yourselves and maybe give a 1-minute introduction to what your take on this issue is, and then we'll start to have some questions. Perhaps if we start with you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So my name is Asaf Pilo. I'm VP Sales with MinerEye. Is doing data classification, unstructured data classification. Our intake on AI, machine learning, automation is that when you're dealing with hundreds of millions of files, that you need to cluster and make sense in order to protect your data, your assets. You have to know what's in your data, what the data is talking about, what those documents are talking about, and that's the only way that you'll be able to protect your assets, your business, and your business. Obviously most of the contracts, written documents, everything that put together your business.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Niklas Hellermann. I'm one of the managing directors of SoSafe, and as I said, we are focusing on that awareness part, but also like strongly keeping in mind it's only one layer. But I'm strongly of the opinion that nowadays you have to have a multi-layer approach to cybersecurity that involves the old school antivirus tools, stuff like Darktrace does, but also the human side, and only then you can basically defend against those highly advanced AI attack forms that will be coming up front at a certain point in time, and that's actually what we are doing, like keeping a close look onto those offensive forms of AI or offensive applications of AI in order to develop measures, awareness measures, to tell basically employees how to spot them and how to defend against them.
Max Heinemeyer from Darktrace, Technical Director. I work with our big strategic clients and use our tool every day, so very based on much of practice work, having used an AI solution for 3.5 years every day now. And I absolutely think the AI attacks, in what flavor and what form and shape and impact are happening already or going to happen. And we need solid traditional solutions, like this human skin to protect us, but also other more advanced solutions that are properly built and secured to work against these novel threats arising with AI being used by the bad guys.
Hello, my name is Rosario Dale. I work at the University of Oxford in a department called the Oxford Internet Institute, where I'm also the Deputy Director of the Digital Ethics Lab. This is one of the leading research groups in the world working on ethical and governance issues related to digital technologies. I've been in this field for the past 20 years or so. I'm also a Turing Fellow at the Alan Turing Institute in London, which is the National Institute for AI and Data Science. When it comes to AI and cybersecurity, I think that in a nutshell, the position, or my position, is this one, that AI has a great potential for improving cybersecurity practices, but this potential is coupled with significant risks. Security risks, ethical risks, and some of those risks can be mitigated by appropriate governance and policy procedures. And my work and the one of my team is mostly to help shaping these governance and policy procedures so that we can foster innovation and mitigate the risks that it brings about.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Anouk Mangla. I work with Wipro Technologies as Practice Director for Cybersecurity. And our role at Wipro is to make security programs successful for our customers, enterprise customers, looking at not just technology, but things like policy procedures or awareness, basic security hygiene, and definitely AI and advanced technologies which are becoming more and more relevant given the complexity of attacks. So that's our view, and would be happy to discuss it with everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. So we'll get the best out of this if the audience, the participants, ask their questions. So if you have any questions, please put your hand up. In the absence of questions, then I will ask some. So, having listened to the sessions this morning, I don't know whether to go home and cut my throat, really, because there was a UK government survey in 2018 which said that most organizations consider cybersecurity an important and essential area, that 80% of them are spending money on prevention technology, and yet 1 in 4 organizations in the UK was the victim of a cyber attack during that year. Now, is AI going to make this better, or is it going to make it worse? What is the panel's opinion?
If I might take that away, I was of the very same fear, being very technically minded. I thought all this AI rubbish, right? You can just hack it and whatever. I think we're finally turning the tables now on the bad guys, because it always used to be that we had to make one mistake, one misconfiguration. Now it's on them. It depends on what area you look at, but if you can turn around, like with anomaly detection, for example, it really puts the pressure on them. But it's going to be an arms race. So for now, I still sleep very nicely, better than I used to these days, because now the AI can do what human analysts can't do, or we don't have enough human analysts to do the job. But I firmly believe the bad guys are going to catch up in the broad masses in a few years. So right now, I'm still quite satisfied, but if I think forward, we need to keep up this technology advantage.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I may follow on with that. It's a question that needs to be put in a context, not to sound like the usual philosopher in the room, but cyberspace is a place where, or is a context where attacking is going to be constantly more advantageous than defending. I'm not saying that it's constantly or necessarily successful, but because of the facility with which you can attack and remain anonymous, the lower entry cost, and the fact that defense are porous is much more convenient to attack than defend. So this arms race dynamic, this vicious cycle of attacking and then acquiring offensive capabilities more than defensive capabilities is going to bring this game at another level over time. So yes, AI can help for the moment until this same technology does not fall in the hand of the criminals, of the terrorists, of the hackers, and then we are all back to square one. So we have to embrace and understand that this is the dynamic. There is no final winning. Technology is dual use. Defensive technology can be easily repurposed, and it's only a matter of this kind of time advantage until the bad guys catch up. And then when they are all caught up, we need to move forward. So it's a constant dynamic.
It's an arms race.
It's an arms race. It's a real arms race. And the risk there is that we get too caught up into the arms race to forget where we're going, and then at some point we have gone too far. So I would say that the advice is be mindful that it's an arms race, but also let's make sure that we know where we're going, because if we really go too far, then it might be very hard to come back.
Yeah, so will people be able to beat it?
Well, actually, like currently, I mean, if we look at those deep learning or like convolutional neural networks, they are built upon, I mean, they're modeled after people. So that what these kinds of models do, basically, currently people can still do much better, except in those cases where we have huge amounts of data and huge amounts of information. I think that's the area where machine learning models are taking up and probably going to be better than people, and or more resourceful than people. But after all, you can train people, and that's a very simple thing to do. Like confronting them with those attacks, confronting them with the tactics, and then they will learn, and that will be a very, very cost-efficient way of doing it. But also being supported by technology, of course.
Okay, and unless you know what you've got, you can't defend it. So does it help us to know, is it a problem that we don't know what we've got?
Yeah, correct. So using AI to classify data is, I mean, if you try to do it with a human, it's almost impossible. If you look at 500 million documents and you need to understand which documents include some sensitive information that can harm your organization if captured or if stolen. Definitely AI allows us to do man-intensive or human-intensive tasks very quickly, so that we can understand which data we need to protect, which data we can archive or delete, and overall just deal with the attack surface and reduce that attack surface so that those attacks will happen, but what kind of information or data about our business can those hackers retrieve?
And perhaps for a question for you, how can we organize our cybersecurity better? How can we have our processes and so forth enhanced by the use of AI?
No, that's a good question, and that's a question which organizations are struggling with every day, given that the complexity of their systems is way beyond what it used to be a few years back. I mean, it's very difficult for them to know where their IT systems lie, where their data lie, where the users are accessing that information from. So it has to be a combination, and I believe we definitely need technology. We need the latest technology, but it can also be an arms race. But we should look at increasing visibility. And when I say visibility, is about not just knowing where our systems and data is, but also visibility for the people to know what are the risks. Where do we stand in terms of an impact of a cyber attack, or what do we stand to lose as an organization? So user awareness, employee awareness, their understanding of cyber attacks needs to also be augmented. And it need not be focused on a specific set of users or employees, but the entire organization. They all need to know the relevance of cybersecurity. That's what I believe.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I'm still hoping that we're going to get some questions from the audience. Yes? Can we get a
I'm going to go off a tangent a little bit. There is a piece of statistic I can't get out of my head since I came across it earlier in the year. It's that piece of statistics from this research from MMC, the VC firm in London, which says that 40% of the startups classified as AI startups actually don't use AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know whether you came across that. What's the view of the panel? I do apologize, I'm going off a tangent a little bit here.
Can I address that? This really irks me because, we used to say AI, we as Darktrace, and people were like, oh, that's interesting. Fast forward 6 years, we say AI, and people are like, oh yeah, it's all just fake anyway. So it's really hard for us as well who actually do AI. The SNV, the Stiftung Neue Verantwortung, it's a German but international think tank who really just deals with these kind of topics. What is an AI company? What is AI? They just released a paper which we contributed to for the attack surface of ML systems. And they classified what makes up a level 1, level 2, and level 3 AI company. It's a simple checklist, things like, do they have their own machine learning PhDs? How many are there? Did they acquire machine learning companies and this kind of stuff? And just on a side note, we fall into the most mature one. So, but that's if you wonder about this, it's a really easy thing to just take this list of 15 points and go to the AI startup and ask them these questions.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting point. We run in a similar categorization on another project here in Oxford, which is focusing on the use of AI for SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and you have the same kind of thing. So when it starts being AI and when it's not just statistics or just categorization, I think that there is another question to be asked there. Why do we bother thinking, or why do we bother checking whether it's AI or not? What is the difference? What is the implication? Does it matter whether Darktrace is an AI company or is not? And if it does matter, why does it matter? So there is another question to be asked, aside from the marketing and the way companies might do their own PR. Because for me, whether it's an AI company or not, it's about, well, do they have an autonomous learning product? Is there any oversight? Is there any auditing? How are we assessing accountabilities? So there are other questions that comes after your question, which I think we should keep in mind, because assessing whether it's an AI or not company per se, it's of very limited value, aside from the market.
And just really quickly, that's also part of this classification where it says, does the AI contribute anything to their business model, or is it just AI for the sake of marketing AI, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the question also. You as a buyer should ask yourself, what kind of problem are you actually solving? I mean, that's the key question. And is that type of problem, does it need to have any AI application as part of the solution? And most problems don't need AI as a part of the solution, but it's a marketing game because most buyers are actually seeing this as a magical black box that solves any kind of problem for them. And that's certainly a wrong way to see it.
But there's, sorry for hogging up so much speaking time, but one point I wanted to address was the visibility aspect, which I clearly see, especially attackers these days don't just hack you with a phishing email anymore. They might come in over IoT, over your smart thermometers or something. So you need to cover your whole digital estate. And most people don't even know how to secure their servers and laptops, so how would they know how to secure their smart flying monitors, for example? And again, that's the case where I think AI and clustering can really help to tell you, look, you don't need to tell the system that's a smart IP telephone. The system can tell you what it is and give you that visibility. So it's really
it's an interesting point. You've got some vendors on the stage. So does AI help to sell, or does it in fact prevent sales?
Can I read quickly?
What about for services? Does AI help services?
AI definitely, I mean, it's not about whether it's helping services or product vendors. It's about, the question comes down to what is the problem statement we are trying to solve. And definitely, given, as Max mentioned, the complexity that organizations have to deal with, I don't think so the way they have been managing cybersecurity can continue. They will have to rely on more intelligent systems, whether we term it AI level 1, 2, 3, or whatever. So these systems have to also be intelligent in terms of knowing what they're trying to protect, knowing what the attacks are, because the attacks are also evolving. So you need more intelligence. And obviously, it helps everybody. I mean, it's not that it does not help services companies, does not help technology companies. It does help us. But the point is that we will have to elevate intelligence within our systems going forward.
And I actually think the whole view of the buyers is changing. Like when you were walking around ITSA last year, like there were all these AI stickers and deep learning and whatnot. And I think like quickly buyers realized that this is a lot of buzzword bingo. So from our own experience, we like totally prevent using AI when it's not an application where we really use it. We know, for example, we are doing these phishing simulations, and I know there's vendors that say, okay, we have AI-based phishing simulations, which is simply not true and not necessary. So I think the buyers are currently changing their minds about that, and I think for applications that are not at the core of problems that have to be solved by AI, it's actually more like preventing or harmful claim in marketing.
Yes. Okay. Have you got some?
If we look at from our perspective of protecting data and classifying data, if we look at older technologies where most organizations were relying on labeling files or documents and then maybe using a DLP to stop those documents from moving around. And they were built on regular expressions, and you would have to build a huge amount of rules and keep on maintaining that, and you would never cover all the different scenarios. And using AI or machine learning, you have now technologies that the system trains itself with knowing what type of documents or data is sensitive, and it's dynamic. It keeps on building those clusters and growing them, and you don't have to write rules, but actually the system through different technologies and different approaches of classification tells you where the sensitive data is and what type of sensitive data you have.
Lovely, yes.
I think to your question of using AI as a term helps sell or prevents sale, it really depends on the maturity of the prospect. Sometimes they love it because it's a nice and fuzzy and warm word, I guess. Other people have been disillusionized by it. And what's important, what we learned is you have to back it up. So if you just say it's all AI, it's a black box, it's a secret source, nobody's going to trust you. That's why we go in with a free trial for a month and say, okay, look, I can talk all I want, I'm biased, I'm working for a vendor. I can come in tomorrow, plug my box in, it learns for 5 days by itself, no configuration, and then we can see the results. And being able to bridge this gap from jazzy hands and marketing stuff to actually showing value after a short period of time, that's the key. And that's why we've grown so much as well.
Lovely, thank you. Any more questions? Yes, a question in the... Can we pinch one of your mics so that we can just send that down?
Thank you. I was wondering whether are there any areas in which AI may get in conflict with privacy issues? And if the answer is yes, how do you bypass such conflicts?
Yeah, I mean, several. Hard to think when it doesn't. When it comes to cybersecurity, for example, when AI is used for resilience, for threat and anomaly detection, that means monitoring all traffic on a system. deep inspection, analysis of any email, any message, any content, any packet of information sent out. That's a huge potential breach of privacy there. There is a company in Israel, I can't remember the name, but they use AI to learn about movement on the trackpad of the users, biometrics, so to access a system. So to make sure that you are the legitimate user accessing the right system. But that also means a lot of data, personal data, and then whose this data, how and by whom this data are accessed poses a lot of privacy relevant information or aspects. So there are several risks there, which can be mitigated only by appropriate rules and policies and transparency. So if you give consent for that kind of data to be accessed by the company for that purpose, and only that purpose, and those data are managed to that end, well, that might all be fine. But then if those data are sold to third parties, we start having some issues and problems there, I guess.
There's two examples coming to mind. One in the non-cybersecurity area, there's AI being used in HR for automating the initial interview process. So you do a Skype interview and the AI system sees your facial recognition and if you use your mouth a lot, if you lie, if you sweat and that kind of stuff, and based on voice recognition tries to assess if you talk sensible things. Now for me that's very scary. Now we talk about surveillance state, 1984 and all these cyberpunk things, so that's definitely a huge area which needs thinking of clever people like yourselves to make sure it's all ethical and in the right boundaries. If I think more about cybersecurity, I think it's not just about AI. We always have the tension. The best cybersecurity can be done if you have full visibility, like you said. You know what happened, you know why it happened, you can track it down, you can do investigations within seconds. But then you have some people like the Workers' Council in Germany or the Betriebsrat having huge problems with privacy reasons, right? So you need to make sure, and that's not inherent to AI, that's inherent to any security. It's always this tension field. So we counter that because we provide this visibility and all the good stuff by having a pseudonymization mode, which can flip on and all the personal data is pseudonymized, so we can't see it anymore. Processes in place, there's watchers for the watchers, so every step is logged. You can ship it offline, so you know the actions are tracked. It's all staying locally, so GDPR or DSGVO is not a topic in most cases because it's all local, not on the cloud. So it's a real challenge, but I mean, we have customers here in the legal space and big government entities, and it works for them. So it's definitely solvable, but it's definitely a field you need to think about. It's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, as people mentioned here, I mean, surveillance is increasing, whether it's in the physical world or the digital world. Overall level of surveillance is increasing. What's important is for organizations, for states to let people know why are they doing it. I mean, they are, of course, doing it. And what are the consequences? What do people get out of it? The positive sides of it, right? If we are surveilling emails, right? We are trying to protect phishing attacks. So the employees or the users need to be made aware the reasons for doing this thing and what are the consequences of both doing it and not doing it. So there is an impact. There is an impact on privacy, but it's also being done for the good. So, yeah.
If I might just follow up. Everybody's doing it, and yes, there is an impact. One of the criterion to assess this impact is proportionality, or even better, necessity. So it's not that you need to have massive surveillance if all you're trying to do is phishing out or identify the one phishing email. And the criteria of proportionality and necessity is something that we have to understand how to embed into this process, because otherwise we risk having the usual nuclear bomb to kill a hunt, right? So this is not really what we're going to go. There is space to learn how to do that in this area.
So in a sense, the problem of social acceptance of a technology is that governments can regulate it away and say we're not going to use it, but the criminals will continue to use it. Yeah. And so do we believe that the level of social acceptance of this technology, is there going to be, shall we say, a backlash that says we're frightened of AI as a technology and we're going to stop it? I'd be interested in opinions.
I think that's a very valid thought, because I mean, basically with AI models we see them as a black box. We don't know what happens inside, and most people, like regular employees, don't know how they have been trained. So I think the first step is to explain a lot about this technology, so people can actually see what happens and what doesn't happen. And yeah, because otherwise we can't use this like really helpful tool. And I think the first step is really to explain what can be done by AI in cybersecurity and what can't be done.
I think there's two core issues. I mean, there's more, but one is often called the transparency gap or problem or challenge, which I'm talking about cybersecurity now, what we've experienced, right? If we put a system in place that says we're going to look at everything now, then people want to know, how does it work? Why did it come to these conclusions? And why you can't always reverse engineer every decision, we do everything to show how it came to that decision, showing context, data transfers, even packet captures, so all the access to the raw data to make sure you can follow up and understand somehow how it came to that decision. And the second point is trust. What you say is about trust, right? People trust these systems to make decisions. Again, it's based on the decision. Is it a facial recognition system for surveillance? There's going to be more of backlash. Is it a solution to secure you against phishing? Maybe less so, but we've seen there's a trust journey that we had to take our customers through. And again, sorry for talking so much about us, but it's a practical example I think that's quite relevant. So we saw when we put the autonomous response in place that can stop threats by itself, people said, my God, it's going to kill our business. So first we put it in passive mode, recommendation mode, where it says we would like to do these things, enforce normal behavior. People say, okay, that looks quite good. Then it's going to be human confirmation mode, so the human is still in the loop, can take action, and then for certain parts of the business, they can put it into autonomous mode. So this trust journey is really what I want to highlight, that we've seen that was necessary. When WannaCry came around and we had a solution, people were hesitant to put it in place because they didn't trust the solution. Yes, so we had to take them through that journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, to answer your question, governments and civic societies will continue to play by the rule book. I mean, they will have to have a rule book, while the criminals may not have it. I mean, they can do whatever they like to do with technology. So it's important, I mean, as a service provider for us also to make sure that we make organizations understand why are we doing it. I mean, make people understand why this is being done and why it is important, and we should help in shaping policies accordingly. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Maria Teresa, you've got...
No, just a final point. You had two questions. Yes, indeed, criminals are going to do whatever they want to do, but there shouldn't be a measure by any means for companies or for governments or for those who stand on the right side of the thing, because liberal democracies, which is where we live, that's because all the stakeholders behave according to the rules. We define criminals, those who don't. So let's maintain that divide quite clear. I would hate to be in a context where this is what we do in national defense. No? So, we don't define rules because our enemies don't define rules. Yes, but that's by no means a wise way of reasoning. And the other part about social acceptability, that's a key point. We see that when technologies push the boundaries of social acceptability, what we happen is a backlash, which then prompts very hard regulation, which stop innovation. So we have to make sure that technology and social acceptability dance this fine, delicate tango as it were, yes, where we can try to understand each other and go forward, move forward the bar together, because otherwise it's very much problematic. And to do so, it means that technological innovators, they cannot behave or they cannot go forward without thinking about the values of the societies where they operate. The example I'll give you is CareDo Data in the UK. CareDo Data is a program that the UK launched for 15 years to put together a national database of healthcare data for residents and citizens. They didn't have it. It used to be quite a big of a mess. It is still a big of a mess because after launching these systems, which would have allowed GPs, doctors throughout the countries to access relevant healthcare data for their patient, they launched it, they forgot to tell people that they had launched it, to inform citizens, residents about privacy risks, trust, breaching trust, transparency. The backlash was huge. The program has been paused indefinitely, which if you live in the UK means not in this life, not in the next life, never. £50 million out of the window because of ethical concerns. It would have cost nothing to involve stakeholders, citizens in the process, so that innovation would have been accepted. So there has to be this awareness, otherwise we might be doomed.
Yes, lovely, thank you. Perhaps a final word.
Just very shortly, I've seen this already many times that the companies are holding back with the use of technology and use of AI in protection and cybersecurity because many times you'll be able to pick up on something because you have a very high resolution of user behavior and all sorts of cyber aspects. But then you'll approach the end user and he'll say, how do you know this about me? Well, how did you find this information about me? How do you know that my computer has been breached? And they cannot cope with fixing those issues. So a lot of companies are just doing what is mandatory or what is absolutely necessary to secure their business and their customers. And I think that's the smart approach of not just using technology because you can, but to make sure that you're using it in a way that is effective to your business.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, we've now run out of time. We will, the panelists will be available for lunch and during the break. So please will you thank the panel for their participation in this. Thank you.